I left town for 10 days. Just 10. Flew out to Portugal to clear my head, drink bad coffee, walk old streets, normal human reset stuff. And when I came back, there was a full-blown concrete basketball court sitting right in the middle of my forest trail. Not like a makeshift hoop. Not like someone dragged a rim out there for fun. I'm talking about a 50-foot slab, painted lines, lighting poles. The whole suburban sports complex dropped into what is supposed to be protected conservation land, my land. Yeah, that kind of welcome home. Now, to understand why this hit different, you gotta picture the place. I own about 12 acres of woodland, not manicured lawns, not HOA-perfect hedges. Actual forest, dense, quiet. The kind of place where you hear your own footsteps and not much else. And cutting through it is this narrow trail, about half a mile long, winding, uneven. Been there since like the late 70s, long before I bought the property back in 2004. It's not just a path. It's part of a conservation easement, which basically means I don't just own it. I'm responsible for keeping it untouched, native. Plants, no development, no improvements. You don't build on it, period. And for almost 2 decades, nobody questioned it. Not once. Neighbors came and went. People respected the boundaries. Some even thanked me for keeping the trail intact. It was one of those rare, quiet agreements between humans and nature. Don't mess with it, and it'll stay beautiful. Then came the new neighbors, Caleb and Marissa. They moved in from Seattle, paid way above asking for the estate next door, closed fast, like suspiciously fast, and immediately started calling their place an eco-retreat, which, I'll be honest, sounded great on paper. I mean, who doesn't want neighbors that care about the environment, right? First time I met Caleb, I was out on the trail clearing fallen branches after a storm. He jogged up, super friendly, big smile, asking about wildlife, asking if deer passed through, what kind of birds we had. I told him I'd been there a while, knew the land pretty well. He nodded, seemed impressed, then he jogged off. That was it. Or at least, that's what I thought. Fast forward 9 weeks. I get back from my trip, pull into my driveway, grab my bag, and instinctively walk toward the trail. It's kind of my ritual, first thing I do when I get home, just to reset, check on things. Except this time, I didn't make it 10 steps before I stopped. Because the trail was gone. I mean, not gone like overgrown or blocked. Gone like buried, replaced, erased under a massive slab of fresh concrete that stretched across the entire width of the path. Bright white lines painted on it, hoops installed, poles with floodlights already wired up. It looked like something you'd see behind a high school gym, not in the middle of protected woodland. I just stood there for a second, like my brain needed a reboot. Because there's no logical scenario where this makes sense. Nobody accidentally builds a basketball court. Nobody, pours concrete across someone else's land, especially land that's legally protected. So yeah, I pulled out my phone and called Caleb. He picked up on the second ring, cheerful, like he'd been waiting for me to call. Hey man, I didn't match the energy. Why is there a basketball court on my trail? Pause. Not long. Just enough to tell me he knew exactly what I was talking about. Oh, that. Yeah, we thought that was just like a deer path or something, he said, casual, almost amused. But hey, it's a nice upgrade, right? You can still walk around it through the brush. Through the brush. I actually laughed. Not because it was funny, but because sometimes when something is so ridiculous, your brain doesn't know what else to do. No, I said, steady. That trail is on my property. It's part of a conservation easement. I have the survey documents. What you built is not just trespassing, it's illegal. And that's when his tone shifted fast. Well, our contractor said it was in used land, he replied, sharper now. So if you've got a problem, maybe you should talk to a lawyer. Click. He hung up. Just like that. And here's the thing. That moment right there. That wasn't confusion anymore. That wasn't a misunderstanding. That was a decision. They knew what they were doing. Or at the very least, they decided it didn't matter. And now they were daring me to do something about it. So, I did. I called a demolition crew before I even walked back to the house. And then I called my attorney. All right, let's pause the movie for a second, because what just happened here, it's not just some neighbor drama. It's actually a textbook case of how people get themselves into serious legal trouble while thinking they're being clever. From a legal perspective, this is about 2 things, property boundaries and conservation easements. And those are not suggestions, they're not guidelines, They are enforceable restrictions tied to the land itself. That means even if Caleb just bought his property, whatever rules apply to that land, and mine, were already in place long before he showed up with his contractor and his Pinterest dreams. According to standard procedure, before you build anything, especially something permanent like pouring concrete, you're supposed to verify property lines through a survey, check zoning laws, and if there's a conservation easement involved, you usually need explicit approval from the governing authority. You don't just eyeball a patch of flat ground and go, yeah, this feels like mine. That's how lawsuits happen. Now here's where it gets interesting. This is a psychological trap a lot of people fall into. It's called assumed ownership through improvement. Basically, if someone invests money into a piece of land, builds something, upgrades it, they start to feel like they have a claim to it, even if legally they don't. It's not logic, it's ego. I built it, therefore it's mine, or at least I deserve to keep it. And when you combine that with a bit of entitlement, especially from people who move into a place and immediately try to reshape it, you get exactly this situation. They don't ask, they don't verify, because deep down they've already decided the answer should be yes. The lesson here is simple, but people ignore it all the time. Just because something looks unused doesn't mean it's unowned, and just because you can build something doesn't mean you're allowed to keep it. All right, now let's get back to the part where things start falling apart for them. So I called my attorney, except in this version of my life. His name's Daniel, mid-50s, calm voice, the kind of guy who doesn't raise his tone because he doesn't need to, and I just told him straight. My neighbor poured a basketball court across my conservation trail. There was a pause, not confusion, just calculation, papers shuffling on his end. Send me your survey and the easement documents, he said. 10 minutes later, I emailed everything over, property lines, conservation restrictions, the original county filings, all of it, the kind of paperwork you don't think about until suddenly it becomes the most important thing in your life. He called me back in under an hour, and I remember this clearly because his tone had changed. Not concerned, not cautious, certain. Yeah, this is bad. For them, he said. That structure is sitting entirely on protected land, and not just yours, land that legally cannot be developed under any circumstances. They didn't just cross a boundary, they violated the easement. And I asked, and you have the right to remove it. Immediately. That word stuck, immediately. No waiting. No negotiating. No, let's talk it out over coffee. Just remove it. But Daniel, being Daniel, still followed protocol. He drafted a formal notice, sent it over to Caleb and Marissa. 5 days to demolish the structure themselves, restore the land, and avoid escalation. Clean, simple, generous, more generous than they deserved, honestly. Their response came 2 days later. Not from them directly, of course not. From a law firm. And the tone? Oh, it was polished, confident, completely detached from reality. They claimed the land appeared and used, that the construction was an enhancement to the surrounding environment. And this part still gets me. They offered to let me use the court anytime I wanted, like they had just gifted me access to something on my own property. I actually sat there reading that letter twice, just to make sure I wasn't missing something. Share a basketball court on a protected conservation trail that they built illegally. Yeah, no, Daniel didn't even entertain it. Filed for an injunction the same day. Now, while all this legal back and forth was happening, Caleb didn't slow down. He escalated. Weekends turned into events. I'd look out toward the trees and hear music, shouting, sneakers squeaking on concrete. People, strangers, walking onto my land like it was a public park. Cars lining up near the edge of the property. Pickup games, then full-on tournaments. At one point I walked out there, stood at the edge of what used to be my trail, and just watched for a minute. Guys laughing, high-fiving, someone yelling, next game. Like this was their spot, like it had always been theirs. I caught Caleb's eye. Walked straight up to him. You're trespassing, I said, not loud, just clear. He barely even looked concerned. My lawyer said we can use it, he replied, bouncing the ball once, casual, dismissive. That right there, that confidence, it wasn't based on law. It was based on assumption, the same assumption that got them into this mess in the first place. Because 4 weeks later, reality showed up. Judge Keller, environmental law background, decades on the bench, the kind of judge who doesn't need theatrics because the facts do the talking. He reviewed everything. The survey, the easement, the photos, the timeline. And from what Daniel told me, the hearing wasn't even dramatic. It was deficient. The court finds that the structure in question is in direct violation of a conservation easement and is located entirely within the plaintiff's property boundaries, he stated. Immediate removal is authorized. No stay is granted. No stay. That means no delay. No grace period. No, let's figure this out later. It meant go? So I did. Next morning, early, I called in the demolition crew I'd lined up weeks before. A guy named Hector ran it. Heavy equipment, jackhammers, the whole operation. These weren't weekend contractors. These were people who knew exactly how to make something disappear. Daniel showed up too, just to make sure everything stayed clean, documented. We even notified the county conservation officer ahead of time, so there'd be no confusion about what was happening. And then it started. The first crack of the jackhammer echoed through the trees like a gunshot. Sharp, final, and then another, and another. Concrete doesn't break quietly. It resists, it fights back, until it doesn't. Within an hour, that pristine surface, the one they painted and showed off and built their little social scene on, was fractured, split into jagged sections, rebar exposed, twisted like wire under pressure. By midday, machinery rolled in, chunks of concrete lifted, hauled off, dust rising through the sunlight filtering between the trees. The lighting poles came down next, cut at the base, dragged out like they were never meant to be there. I stood there for most of it, not saying much, just watching something that never should have existed stop existing. 10 hours. That's all it took. 10 hours to erase their investment. By day 2, they were excavating the base layer, removing everything down to the natural soil, restoring the ground, reseeding native cover, making it look, slowly, like it had before all this started. And that's when Caleb and Marissa showed up, right as the last truck was being loaded. I saw them before they saw me, stepping out of their car, looking confused at first, then frozen, then, panic. Caleb walked forward fast, too fast. His face had gone pale. "What the hell is this?" he shouted, looking at the empty space where his court used to be. "Do you have any idea how much that cost?" I didn't match the energy. I just handed him the court order. He didn't even read it fully before launching into it, talking about destruction of property, about lawsuits, about how I'd just wiped out $40-something thousand of construction. And that's when I finally said it. Judge said immediate removal. I told him. No waiting period. Silence, just for a second, but it landed. He called the police anyway. Of course he did. They showed up, took one look at the documentation, the permits, the order, and there was nothing to discuss. This wasn't vandalism. This was compliance. A few weeks later, he tried to sue me, $47,000 for construction costs, materials, damages, the whole thing. Didn't go anywhere. Dismissed. And the final twist? He was ordered to cover my legal fees, plus an additional penalty. So in the end, the court was gone. The trail was back. And the only thing Caleb really owned was the bill. So that's how a quiet stretch of forest turned into a full-blown legal war, and then right back into a quiet stretch of forest again, just with a much more expensive lesson buried under the soil. And here's the thing, stories like this, they sound extreme, almost cinematic, like something that wouldn't happen to a normal person, until you realize it actually happens all the time, just in smaller, less dramatic ways. Fences built 2 feet over the line, sheds creeping into easements, neighbors cleaning up land that isn't theirs. It's always the same pattern. Someone assumes, someone acts, and then someone pays for it. The lesson here is not just don't build on someone else's land. That's obvious. The real takeaway is deeper than that. It's about how quickly confidence can replace verification and how dangerous that swap really is. Because from a legal perspective, ownership isn't about what looks right. It's about what's documented. Lines on a survey matter more than lines of sight. And conservation easements? Those aren't flexible. They don't care about your plans, your budget, or how nice your idea is. They exist specifically to stop situations like this. But what fascinates me more is the psychology behind it. This is a psychological trap, and Caleb fell straight into it. That belief that if you improve something, if you invest in it, if you make it better, then somehow you've earned the right to it. And the longer it sits there, the more real that belief feels, until someone comes along with paperwork and reality just snaps it in half. And let's be honest, there was also a layer of ego here. That quiet assumption that rules apply differently to you. That if you move fast enough, build big enough, act confident enough, people will either go along with it or back down. Sometimes that works, until it doesn't. According to standard procedure, every single step they skipped, survey verification, boundary confirmation, easement review, those aren't formalities, they're safeguards. They exist to protect you from exactly this kind of loss. Because once concrete is poured, once money is spent, once you've publicly committed to something, backing out gets harder and denial gets louder. And that's where people double down. Instead of stopping, they escalate. They host events, invite others, normalize the mistake. Because if enough people treat it as real, maybe it becomes real. It doesn't. From a legal perspective, reality is whatever the documents say it is. And eventually, those documents show up. Now, if there's anything worth taking from this, it's this: slow down before you act on land that isn't unquestionably yours, and if you're on the other side of it. If someone crosses your boundary, literally or figuratively, handle it early, because the longer something illegal sits there, the harder it becomes to untangle, not legally, but emotionally, socially, sometimes even financially. And yeah, I could have ignored it for a while, let it slide, avoid the conflict, but that's how you lose ground, inch by inch, until one day you're asking permission to walk on what used to be yours. Not happening. So now I'm curious. What would you have done? Would you have tried to settle, share the space, maybe avoid the fight altogether? Or would you have done exactly what I did: call in the crew, tear it down, and let the paperwork do the talking? Drop your take below, because trust me, everyone thinks they know what they'd do, until it's their land, and their line, that gets crossed.